really appreciate the audience. So I'm sure we all have been in the situation where unfortunately when we had to do a procedure, we had a complication and we had to deal with it. So what I'll try to do in next 5-10 minutes is just give a brief background, what are the predicting factors for the bleeding and how to handle it, and what are the tips and tricks when we do it. I think he has asked me to give some costings as well, but I think it's realistically it is very difficult to give costings per se. So when, where and who will do it, I think that's what he has asked me to tell. So when, I think we all are aware, when the conservative management fails, when somebody is bleeding, exsanguinating or hemodynamically unstable, that is when we actually try to do, and where it should be done. I think if your procedure is being done in a hospital where you have other specialities, then it's not much of a problem. You need to have a proper cath lab. Unfortunately, the CIAM which we use for PCNLs will not be good enough to do these kind of procedures. So you need to be in a setup where you have a proper cath lab where the subtraction angiography facilities are available. And who is going to do it? I think whoever has got skills to do the embolization and has got an in-depth knowledge about the other possibilities where to deal with, that's the person who should be doing it. I think in Indian scenario, as of now, it is the interventional radiologist. So I will just go through some of the slides which just give a background a little bit, and the more and more minimally invasive procedures that are done on the kidneys, and there is always the risk for arterial injury, and the arterial injuries now again are dealt with minimally invasive procedures, most likely with the endovascular procedures like embolizations. The most important thing is the awareness and timely recognition, because in my experience there is that hesitancy when a complication happens to not recognize or accept it and refer or take help from the person, because this is just the human nature, I suppose. And delayed diagnosis in the literature is a clear evidence for negative influence of the outcomes of the patients. And as the diagnostic and intervention radiologists, we should be aware of the complications that can happen during the procedures and after the procedures. And incidents, if unfortunately I have, my experience is I don't do the nephrostomies with the fluoroscopic guidance. We use ultrasound all the time, and believe me or not, whenever we puncture the renal calyces system, we see the bleeding straight away on ultrasound. So that is so common. Whereas the incidence or the frequency where you need the intervention is only 0.3 to 1.4%. So it is not at all a big number. But when it happens, I think the outcomes can be catastrophic, especially if patient has to lose the kidney. And all the procedures where you end up with the needling the kidney, whether the biopsy, the PCNL, nephrostomy, or any other the endourology procedures can lead to the hemorrhagic complication. But most commonly in our experience, it has been the PCNL and PCN. And since I have moved back to India, I think the renal biopsies performed by the nephrologist, I am seeing slightly increased frequency. I think that is more to do with the logistics where the patient's presentation is late to the nephrologist and the platelet dysfunction is high. And in addition to the bleeding complications, we as a clinician should be aware of the other associated complications, because when one happens, we should not concentrate only on the bleeding part, but we also need to make sure that we are not missing something else, especially like the sepsis and bowel injury, pneumo and hemothorax, and other issues. And most common presentations are usually the pseudoaneurysm formation or the fistulous communication between a renal artery and the vein. It's not usually the main renal artery or the vein, it's usually the interlobar branch or the terminal branches. And whenever a needle track goes very close to the artery, it should close by itself, but unfortunately where the complication happens, it can lead to form a pseudoaneurysm if the injured artery opens into the renal parenchyma, or it can form a fistula if it communicates directly with the renal vein. And very rarely we have seen, in my own experience, a direct injury when the puncture happens into the renal pelvis, where the vessels are situated anterior to it, direct arterial and venous injuries, and it's a very catastrophic outcome, and most of the times these patients will end up with a nephrectomy. I think this is the key, diagnosis. I think whenever a procedure is done, we are all aware what we need to expect a normal recovery of the patient. When there is a deviation from these things, I think we should start looking things very carefully. As far as bleeding is concerned, most important I think is the clinical diagnosis. As a urologist, you know very well when the bleeding is happening and what needs to be done. And if you have to use the radiology, I think ultrasound is probably the single most important modality, because it will give us an idea where exactly is the bleeding. Is it perinephric or is it completely away from the kidney? Because in the left-sided procedures you can have splenic injuries, and in the right-sided procedures you can have hepatic injuries. You just need to be aware of it. Very rarely we have to use CT, and when you have to use CT, the downside is you end up giving an IV contrast. Unfortunately, in a compromised kidney, giving IV contrast may make things worse. We use CTs very judiciously after discussing with the urologist and the nephrologist. And angiogram should be used when you are contemplating an invasive procedure, especially when you are planning for the embolization. Clinical features, we are all aware, most commonly is the increasing flank pain, uncontrolled hematuria and bleeding from the access site, the nephrostomy site, and acute increase in creatinine, and the patient becoming hemodynamically unstable with a drop in HB. And delayed presentation is possible in up to 3 weeks. It is not uncommon at all. It is quite common, especially when patients are on some kind of antiplatelets after the procedure, when they need to start antiplatelets. So this is just a picture of a CT scan showing a perinephric hematoma after the procedure. I think there is no need for me to explain much of this part. I think, as I have seen here, most of it is done fluoroscopically, but my personal experience has always been ultrasound, and we use only fluoroscopy once we enter the pelvic calyceal system. So Brodel's plane is an important landmark where you use a posterolateral aspect to access the renal, pelvic and the calyceal system. The point which can be importantly mentioned here is what are the predicting factors. I think the Stagon calculus, which is partial and multiple nephrostomy tracts, and the method of dilatation what we use, and sometimes the stone burden. Unfortunately, the background of the patient, like hypertension, diabetes and other features, can make the vessels more friable, especially calcified arteries don't contract that easily. So the elderly age, they can bleed quite significantly. And very peculiar situation is where you have a solitary kidney and an inexperienced operator, where you have to have an upper calyceal puncture. Then we are actually looking for trouble, because this is a precious kidney. We have to be careful when we are doing this. We have to take all the extreme care to do these kind of procedures. Management, I think we are all aware, most commonly it will resolve spontaneously. We don't have to do anything. I think there is a kind of move towards intervene very quickly, but my experience is, if you discuss properly, most of the times, if there is patient is hemodynamically stable, we can observe, do serial ultrasounds, and if there is a nephrostomy tract, I think we obviously have to clamp it and keep it in place, and we need to make sure that we are not missing things here. And venous bleeds, very standard management. You usually clamp the tube and you use a tamponade machine, and IV fluid management can take care of it. Whereas arterial injuries, as I said, most of the time they settle themselves, but unfortunately when they do end up with the pseudoaneurysms and fistula formation, we may have to do the corrective measures like embolization. How do we deal with this? I think at least since 15-16 years since I've been doing this, At least in UK, straight away whenever there was a complication, I think there was not much of a discussion. Surgeons would simply say, that's it, you take over. I don't think I have myself involved in anybody having had to open the kidney to stop the bleeding, and most of the times we'll end up with a nephrectomy. And the reason the endovascular techniques have improved is the same, the logic what is applied to the urological practice, endourology, the smaller microcatheters and the hydrophilic catheters and the hardware which is improving very rapidly is making things very minimally invasive. And the most commonly performed procedure is the super selective renal artery embolization, what we call as SRAE. And very rarely, where 2 cases I have personally been involved, where the renal artery is directly punctured and it forms a pseudoaneurysm, then we end up putting a covered stent. So what is the present evidence of the renal artery embolization? The success rates are very high, there is no doubt about it, and the advantage is when you select them super selectively, the parenchymal tissue loss is very less, so loss of renal function is also very less, and most importantly, precise site of identification is important, because very rarely you will have capsular artery injuries, you will have splenic injuries, and you do have lumbar artery injuries, so you need to be identifying them. Unfortunately, when we do open surgery, then with all that hematoma, it will be very tricky and challenging to manage it on the table. And the principle of embolization is basically exactly like ligation. You go proximal to the bleeding point and try to embolize with coils, particles, gel foam, whatever you want to use, and decrease the pressure head. In that sense, the pseudoaneurysm is thrombosed, or the fistula can be closed. I won't go too much into the hardware, but nowadays what is happening is we are using more and more of radial access. That means patient sits up and literally can walk back once the procedure is done. So that is the only relevant point here, and we used multiple shaped catheters, Terumo wires, and the more and more microcatheters where we use in the neuro territory can be used similarly here. In that way we are avoiding the under background renal damage, which is probably the most relevant point in the present scenario. And there are various embolization agents. I think to keep the cost low, a lot of people use gel foam, which personally I would not recommend, because it can cause non-target embolization and loss of renal function. And the choice of agent is most of the times it depends on the operator. And my personal choice is most of the times coils, which are very stable to use and can be deployed very safely without causing much complications. The other agents which can be used are the balloons, plugs, and particles, gel foam, alcohol. This is just a picture to show what various particles that are available. On the left at the top of the screen, you can see the lipidol with glue, which is the same glue which is used for the skin, this thing, and gel foam and alcohol, and these are the multiple shaped coils which you are using here. So this is a case of a large AVF. You can see on a CT scan the renal vein is filling at the time of the arterial phase, whereas the right kidney you can only see the parenchymal phase. There is a large venous fistula there, and this is embolized with a large coil. So there is a large aneurysm, you can see the arrow mark, and it is coiled with the large group of coils. There is another case, this is interesting. On the extreme left of the image, what you see is the main renal artery, which when angiogram was selectively done, it did not show any bleeding. So at this time, you need to look at the nephrographic phase and see that the lower pole of the kidney is not filling that well. You can clearly appreciate it. So you need to search for the accessory renal arteries or extra renal arteries, where you can clearly see that is the accessory renal artery, and there is the communication between the lobar artery and the venous filling. So this is an AVF, which was comfortably embolized with a coil. So the tissue loss or the background renal parenchymal loss is hardly anything here. You can even you are protecting the sub branch of the renal artery here. This is another case where you can clearly see a pseudoaneurysm coming from the upper polar artery, and using a microcatheter. So this is a main catheter, and in that you use a microcatheter, and you go as distally as possible, and you just drop a couple of drops of glue and you embolize. And you can clearly see the parenchymal phase, the kidney is protected, so there is very unlikely to be much loss of the kidney function. And this is a case which I was talking about, direct injury to the main renal artery, and you can clearly see a pseudoaneurysm sitting there, and here you basically put a covered stent which you have to size this accordingly. Most of the times it's around 6 or 8 millimeters covered stent. This is another case. Unfortunately, here the puncture was very central, and here the calyces were filling after the angiogram, and this is again a communication between the artery and the calyx, and the pseudoaneurysm is sitting there, which was embolized with microcoils. This is an interesting case. It was not a percutaneous procedure, but just to show how innovative it can be. It's a polycystic kidney, and patient was presenting with bleeding, and you can clearly see a pseudoaneurysm here, bleeding point, which was seen on Doppler, and it was percutaneously managed with ultrasound guided injection of the thrombin. And as I mentioned before, you need to be careful about extra source from the other than renal arteries. This is a case which we performed recently. The renal angiogram is absolutely normal, no bleeding, but patient has a large perinephric hematoma, and you can clearly see a capsular artery coming, and this is a microcatheter into the capsular artery and embolized with coils. What is the evidence? Technical success rate most of the times is 100%, clinical success rate is 95%, and the studies have very clearly told the complication rates are also very minimal. And what are the adverse effects? Very minimal, renal ischemia and non-target embolization. We need to be careful here when we are using especially the particles. Try not to inject very proximally because you are going to kill the renal bed. So take home messages, I think awareness is most important, and as an interventional radiologist and diagnostic radiologist, we also need to be aware when certain procedures are done, what to expect. Most important is to deal with it at the earliest so that we don't get into the the DIC kind of scenario where a patient has bled because of waiting for too long. Thank you very much.